In the beginning, before the gods were born, before even time could remember its own name, the earth trembled under the weight of a dark and ancient power. The Titans, colossal beings of unfathomable might, had ruled over the cosmos with iron fists, their dominion unchallenged by anything that dared to defy them. They were the primordial forces that had shaped the world, birthed from Gaia, the eternal earth herself, and Uranus, the boundless sky. From the depths of Tartarus to the very stars, they had spread their reign across all that was known, until one by one, they were betrayed by their own blood and thrown into the void. Their fall was swift, but not without consequence, for the echoes of their rage still lingered in the cold, unyielding dark. But the abyss cannot silence all things. Beneath the surface of a world untouched by time, the imprisoned Titans lay in their unholy slumber. And in the silence of their prison, there was something stirring, something ancient and restless, something that had been bound by chains forged in the heart of the earth. The winds howled as they carried the whispers of those long forgotten. The ocean roared with the fury of Poseidon, the sea god who had once ruled with strength rivaling their own. From the shadows of the underworld, Hades, lord of the dead, cast his gaze upon the heavens, his eyes gleaming with the hunger of eternal darkness. And high above, the gods of Olympus, ever so righteous in their newly claimed thrones, felt a tremor in the very air, an omen that foretold the return of those whose names had been erased from mortal memory. The Titans had not been extinguished. They had only been waiting. And when the first rumble echoed from the deepest chambers of the earth, the gods knew that the time had come. The sky darkened with the rage of the long-forgotten, as the heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. The sun hid its face, for it knew that what would soon unfold would burn the world itself. The earth quaked, and from the bowels of the underworld, the Forgotten One stirred. Cronus, the leader of the Titans, and once the mighty king who had devoured his own children to stave off a prophecy, rose from his slumber. His colossal form rose, his body wrapped in the darkness of ages, his eyes burning with an anger that had simmered for millennia. Alongside him, his brothers and sisters awoke, Oceanus, the great river god, with his flowing waters that could drown entire cities, Hyperion, the sun god, whose radiant light could sear the very fabric of the sky, Rhea, his queen, whose maternal love had once been his undoing, and Iapetus, whose strength could split mountains with a mere breath. The air itself trembled at their awakening, as if the earth itself feared the return of those who had once been its masters. And then there was Atlas. Atlas, the mighty Titan, condemned by Zeus to carry the weight of the heavens on his shoulders for all eternity. His bones cracked under the weight, but still, he held his burden, his strength undiminished by the ages. Yet even he felt the stirrings of the old power, the desire to rise once more and reclaim what was his. His back ached with memories of battles fought long ago, and his heart burned with the unquenched desire for vengeance. The gods had no idea what fury was about to descend upon them. As the Titan stirred, the world seemed to hold its breath. The stars blinked uncertainly in the heavens, the seas heaved with a ferocity unseen in centuries, and the land itself seemed to shudder under the weight of an ancient wrath. The battle that was about to unfold would not be one of mere gods and mortals. It would be the final reckoning, the last stand of the Titans against the very forces that had cast them down. And when the first of the Titans' footsteps reverberated across the land, the gods of Olympus would know that the true war had begun. They had forged their thrones from the bones of the past, but now, the past had returned to reclaim them. The heavens would bleed. The gods of Olympus, who had long basked in the glory of their unchallenged reign, stood unprepared before the storm that was now rising. The world itself was no longer a place of peace, for the earth groaned and the skies darkened with the weight of impending destruction. Cronus, the once mighty king of the Titans, stood at the head of the resurgence, his monstrous form a silhouette of fury against the bruised sky. His eyes burned with an unholy fire, a fire stoked by the betrayal of his own children, who had cast him into the pit of Tartarus to claim the throne for themselves. And now, from his prison of eons, he would return, not for peace, but for vengeance. Beside him, the other Titans rallied, a relentless tide of ancient power and primal fury. They were the foundation of all creation, the first beings to rise from the dark womb of the cosmos, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim what had been stolen. Among them, there were few who could match the ferocity of the storm that was about to engulf the world. Oceanus, the father of all rivers, oceans, and seas, spread his massive arms wide, summoning the oceans to rise. The seas boiled and churned with unimaginable violence, crashing against the shores in an unstoppable wave of destruction. His roar was like the deafening clap of thunder, as if the very waters themselves had come to life with the fury of the primordial world. Hyperion, the titan of light and the sun, strode forward, his body radiant with an inner fire that seemed to scorch the air around him. His radiance could blind the gods themselves, and as he lifted his arms to the heavens, the sun burned brighter, hotter, as if it could consume the world in its fiery embrace. It was said that Hyperion's light had once given birth to Helios, the god of the sun, Selene, the goddess of the moon, and Eos, the goddess of the dawn, but now, there was no mercy in his golden gaze. His light would not be a gift to the heavens, it would be a weapon, a blinding scourge to drive the gods from their thrones. And then there was Rhea, the great mother, the queen of the Titans, whose nurturing heart had once been the strength of the earth itself. Yet, the gods had forced her hand when they took her children from her, one by one, devoured by her own husband Cronus. Now, her heart burned not with love, but with the fires of vengeance. She stood tall, her form as vast as the earth itself, her presence commanding the very ground beneath her feet to tremble. Iapetus, the titan of mortal life, stood among them, his eyes filled with a darkness born of ancient suffering. His children had been mortal, and it was their bloodline, Prometheus and Epimetheus, that had been entrusted with the gift of man. But the gods had been jealous, seeking to claim humanity as their own. Iapetus' fury was a cold, calculating wrath. He would not only destroy the gods, but he would erase their creations from existence, for they were the true source of his torment. Together, these titans were an unstoppable force. Their power surged through the land like a storm, a force of nature that no divine will could withstand. The gods of Olympus, who had thought themselves invincible, now felt the weight of the world upon their shoulders. Zeus, the king of the gods, who had once struck down Cronus with the might of his thunderbolt, stood at the head of the Olympian forces, his face hardened by the knowledge that this battle would decide the fate of the world. His eyes flashed with the power of the storm, and in his grasp, the thunderbolt crackled with divine fury. Beside him, his siblings, Hera, the queen of the gods, and Poseidon, the lord of the seas, prepared themselves for the battle of their lives. But even as Zeus called upon his lightning, and Poseidon raised his trident to control the oceans, the Titans had already taken their positions. Their power was ancient, unyielding, and had not been dulled by time. As the heavens themselves seemed to bend under the weight of the conflict, the gods knew that this would not be a battle fought with the strength of divine might alone. This would be a battle of wills, of primal, unbroken power that no mere god could ever hope to challenge. The ground split as the first clash between the Titans and Olympians echoed through the world. The heavens shook with the violent roar of the Titans' fury, and the earth trembled as the gods met them in battle. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts, each strike a blinding flash of divine power, but Cronus was undeterred, his massive form sweeping through the heavens like a tidal wave of destruction. Hera, with her regal and unyielding strength, fought by her husband's side, while Poseidon summoned the oceans to rise in a fury unlike anything the world had ever seen. Yet, even their combined might could not shake the Titans, who fought with the weight of eons behind them. The sky itself seemed to burn with the heat of Hyperion's wrath, and the seas roiled with the immense power of oceanous tides. As the battle raged on, there was no clear victor, only the overwhelming sense that the world was caught in the grip of an ancient power, one that would not be easily defeated. The Titans had returned, and with them came a force that would shake the foundations of the universe itself. And so, as the gods of Olympus met their ancient enemies in the battle for their very existence, the sky grew darker, the winds howled louder, and the world seemed to hold its breath, for the fate of the cosmos hung in the balance. The Titans had come to reclaim what was once theirs, and the gods of Olympus would find themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever known. The battle raged on, a ferocious clash of power so great that it seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. Each thunderclap from Zeus' storm was drowned by the roar of the Titans, each flash of Poseidon's trident only deepened the sea's rage. The heavens, once a place of light and order, now burned with the fury of unrelenting forces. The The skies themselves twisted and writhed as Hyperion's golden flames clashed against the searing bolts of Zeus, and the ground trembled as the Titans, with their immense strength, pushed back against the gods' defenses. The Titans had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. Cronus, the towering king of the Titans, was at the heart of it all, his mere presence causing the air to tremble with the weight of millennia. His face, once handsome in its divine perfection, was now twisted with the pain of betrayal. His eyes burned with the fire of vengeance, each glance enough to turn a god's heart to stone. His colossal hand, still wrapped in the chains of past defeat, swung wide, and with it, entire mountains were torn from their foundations and flung into the air. His rage was primal, deep, and unrelenting. Zeus had fought his father once before, long ago, but this time, there was no fear in him. His power had grown since that first war, and now his body pulsed with the strength of the sky itself. With every strike of his thunderbolt, a storm of unparalleled force erupted, blackening the skies. But Cronus, with his eternal strength, was not easily overcome. His voice, deep and thunderous, boomed through the chaos as he laughed at the folly of his son's defiance. "You are nothing more than a child of your own arrogance, Zeus," Cronus' voice rumbled, shaking the very heavens. "You think you have won? You have merely inherited a crown forged in blood and lies. The gods are weak, flesh born of your feeble minds. We, the Titans, are the true forces of this world." Hera, desperate to protect her husband, cast forth her divine might, summoning the powers of her own birthright. She commanded the heavens with a strength that rivaled even the fiercest storms. Yet, her power seemed almost insignificant compared to the dark force of the Titans. In the distance, Poseidon summoned waves taller than mountains, but even the ocean screamed in agony as they collided with the Titans' rage. Oceanus, a towering figure who had once been the source of all waters, struck with tidal waves that swallowed the gods' very defenses, his form twisting and shifting as though the seas themselves had come alive with vengeance. But it was not only the Titans' physical might that threatened to consume the gods, it was the very essence of their being. Iapetus, once a god of mortality, wove a dark and twisted spell that seemed to distort time and reality itself. The gods' immortal forms began to flicker, as though their very existence was being peeled away layer by layer, eroding under the weight of his curse. It was said that Iapetus' children, Prometheus and Epimetheus, had once given humanity the gift of fire, but now it was the flame of their father that burned with the power to undo the gods' divine nature. As the Olympians struggled to hold their ground, there was a looming sense of something darker, something far worse, waiting to be unleashed. The battle was not one of simple strength. No, this war was a war for the very soul of the universe. And in the depths of Tartarus, the prison that once held the Titans, something stirred, a presence so dark, so malevolent, that the very idea of it caused the gods to shudder. It was Tartarus himself, the very embodiment of chaos and torment, the first being ever born of chaos. His prison had not held him forever. In the depths of the earth, he had waited, bound by chains of godly power, but now, as the war unfolded above, those chains began to crack and shatter, piece by piece. He was an ancient, primordial force, a god of suffering, of endless night, a force that even Cronus himself feared. He was the darkness between the stars, the gnashing teeth of oblivion, the endless void that devoured all hope. In the throes of war, as the gods were pushed to the brink of destruction, the gates of Tartarus creaked open, and a foul, stifling wind began to leak from the abyss. This was not merely a battle between gods and titans. This was a battle for existence itself. The Titans, now aware of the stirring of Tartarus, turned their gaze towards the abyss. Cronus himself, though formidable beyond measure, hesitated, his heart darkened by an ancient fear, the fear of an entity even more terrifying than himself. Tartarus was coming, and he was hungry. As the first whispers of this malevolent power swept across the battlefield, even the Titans faltered. For all their strength, they knew that they could not control Tartarus. He was the one thing beyond their grasp. And the gods? They too felt the dread creeping into their hearts. Zeus could not hide the terror that now gripped him. The winds began to howl like a chorus of lost souls, and the earth quaked violently under the weight of an eternal hunger. The gods' divine powers, so long used to asserting their dominance, suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades all now realized that even if they won this war against their ancient forebears, it would not be enough. The Titans were the least of their problems. Tartarus was coming, and if he emerged, nothing, not even the gods themselves, could stand in his path. But even in this bleak moment, the gods did not falter. They gathered their strength, their resolve. This war was not merely for their own survival, it was for the survival of the universe itself. If they failed, the sun would cease to rise, the seas would swallow the lands, and the very stars would be snuffed out by the darkness that would consume all. In that final moment, as the winds of fate began to close in around them, the gods knew that there could be no turning back. The storm of chaos was upon them, and with it came the terrifying realization that they might not be the ones to win this war. The Titans had returned, but worse still, something far darker had awoken from the deepest chasms of the world, a shadow that would cast its pall over all. The sky had become a twisted tapestry of fury and anguish. The very foundations of Olympus trembled as the forces of chaos clashed, gods and titans, ancient powers locked in a battle for the soul of the universe. The war had stretched on for eons, and now, as the once proud Olympians fought for their very existence, the true horror of their situation was becoming clear. They were not simply fighting the Titans, they were fighting the unrelenting, consuming darkness of Tartarus itself. The winds howled like the cries of the damned, swirling around the battlefield with a malevolent force. The Titans, though immense and powerful, were now faced with a new terror. Tartarus was free, his chains shattered by the very storm they had stirred. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating, like the crushing weight of an endless void pressing down upon the gods. The earth itself seemed to cry out as Tartarus' shadow stretched across the land, his mere gaze capable of breaking the spirit of even the most powerful god. Cronus, once the supreme ruler of the cosmos, stood before the abyss, his gaze fixed upon the darkened horizon. The war had raged too long, and now he understood the cost of his defiance. Even the Titans, masters of the earth and sky, felt the cold breath of Tartarus on their necks. The ancient god of suffering, of eternal darkness, was no longer a myth, he was a reality that could not be ignored. Cronus had been consumed by his own thirst for vengeance, but in the face of Tartarus, all that seemed so certain, so invincible, began to crumble. Zeus, too, stood on the precipice of despair. His thunderbolts, once symbols of ultimate power, now seemed so small in comparison to the force that had risen from the earth's very core. His heart was heavy, burdened not just by the weight of his fallen enemies, but by the knowledge that no divine strength could hope to stand against the ancient god of oblivion. His fingers twitched around the hilt of his thunderbolt, but even as he prepared for one final, desperate strike, a cold realization gripped him. This was a war they could not win. Not against the Titans. Not against the darkness that had stirred in Tartarus. The gods of Olympus, once proud and unshakable, now understood that they were mere sparks in the face of an eternal flame. The Titans may have sought to reclaim their birthright, but Tartarus was a force beyond their understanding. The very existence of the gods was now in jeopardy, not from the Titans, not from Cronus, but from the darkness that would swallow them all. And so, with a final, desperate roar, Zeus hurled his thunderbolt at the abyss, his divine might crackling through the air. The bolt of lightning struck the earth, sending a shockwave that split the heavens, but as it reached the heart of the shadow, it simply faded into the darkness, consumed as if the very light had been devoured by the void. In that moment, the gods and Titans realized the terrible truth: this was not a war to be won. It was a war of survival. And in the end, it would not be the gods who stood victorious. It would not be the Titans. No, the true victor of this battle was the one who had remained hidden in the depths, the one who had been waiting, watching, for eons. Tartarus. The darkness consumed all. The sun dimmed, and the stars vanished from the sky, swallowed by the unyielding night that spread like ink across the heavens. The seas boiled, and the very earth cracked open, as if it, too, could not bear the weight of the horror that now ruled it. The Titans, once mighty, fell to their knees, their strength stolen by the overwhelming presence of the ancient god. Even Cronus, the once immortal king of the Titans, could not escape the crushing grip of Tartarus' hunger. Zeus and his gods fell in silence, their bodies disintegrating under the force of the abyss. They had fought bravely, but they had underestimated the darkness that lay in the heart of the universe. The Olympians, in their arrogance, had believed themselves invincible, but they were nothing compared to the primordial void that awaited them. And when the last god fell, when the last Titan was crushed under the weight of Tartarus' wrath, there was no celebration. No triumphant roar. The universe, now empty of gods and Titans alike, simply fell silent. The war had ended, but the true horror was just beginning. The darkness, eternal and absolute, spread across the world, filling the space left by the gods and Titans, as if the very universe itself had been devoured by the night. There was no more sun. No more moon. The earth itself lay bare, uninhabited, a desolate wasteland where only the shadows remained. The gods had fallen. The Titans had failed. And now, only the eternal void of Tartarus remained, an endless expanse of nothingness, where even the stars dared not tread. In the end, the universe had been swallowed whole, consumed by the very darkness that had once been its beginning. And so, as the final breath of existence faded into the abyss, the universe became as it always was, a nothing. And the gods? They had never truly ruled. They had merely been the fleeting moments in a cycle that would forever repeat.